Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your five senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. When it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns, and then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. If you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say, I have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, then attitudes are just shortened states of being. You can feel good in the morning, you can feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, then the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I think there's a strong intellectual division going on in the world right now, because some people are holding on to old paradigms and old beliefs. And look, if we're measuring normal, we're going to get normal. I mean, for years, the idea that you couldn't grow new brain cells or couldn't change the brain in some way, that was a belief. And you know why? Because the scientist that was doing the experiment was studying rodents in an unchanging environment. How could there ever be any new connections or new circuitry or new brain cells if there's no new experiences? So I think in the age of information, in the age of technology, ignorance is a choice. And people are beginning to go, hey, I don't need my doctor to tell me about this. I can get on the internet and read it. Hey, I'm going to read a book on quantum physics, and I'm going to ask the mysterious questions. I'm going to step outside of convention myself. So once you step outside of convention, you'll be considered foolhardy or insane until you're able to produce some type of change. Then you're considered a saint, a holy man, a mystic, a genius. Dare to be original. So I think the camp is divided in a very big way. That's the reason why I'm doing all the measurements. Because I want people to understand that the person that healed themselves of that condition, that traumatic brain injury, I want to show you that their brain is better. They're not just saying, I feel better. No, they are better. I want them to see that. Now, they didn't do that with a drug. They didn't do that with therapy. They didn't do that with anything except by thought alone. And they made those biological changes. So, to answer the question, the camp is divided in many ways. The old paradigms, and then the new understandings in the new paradigm. And then there's this little kind of bridge in between, and we're only as good as the people that are willing to execute it. In other words, You got to be with this. So if you're not skilled at it, we're not going to see any changes. So imagine 500 people or 450 people coming to an event, a workshop, and we are going to help them cross that river and to become conscious of their unconscious thoughts. You know, the ones that say, you can't, it's too hard, this will never happen, I can't change, I'm too this, I'm too old, I'm too that. Get beyond what their habits are, what they say unconsciously. Do they complain? Do they blame? Do they make excuses? Do they feel sorry for themselves? They're the program. They talk about others. Then look at their emotional states. Oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 30 years. I didn't even know I was guilty. It just felt like me. I've been unworthy. I didn't even know I was unworthy. It just felt like who I am. And all of a sudden, they start becoming conscious of that. And then they start creating a new change for themselves. And one by one, you start seeing these breakthroughs. You start measuring those breakthroughs. You get people on the stage to talk about their breakthroughs, show their breakthroughs, show their brain scan, show their heart rate monitor, show the energy change. And I guarantee you, just like an infection can create a disease in a community, I believe that wellness can be as infectious as disease. And you start seeing dramatic changes happening in a small community of people who are outside of the conditioning of their environment. The science has to be done to measure it, but the measurements are only as good as our students. And if they're not doing the work, if they're not developing the ability to sustain brainwave states, if they're not getting beyond their analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And if a person doesn't get beyond their analytical mind, they'll still think within their belief. And I've measured enough brains to tell you is that when you think within your belief, or you think within those limited emotions, you are going to make your brain worse. Without a doubt. It's only when you transcend that analytical mind, you start falling in to those subconscious programs, and you begin to step into the autonomic nervous system, where you can change your chemistry and your biology. So then if our students aren't good at doing that, then it's still a philosophical concept, pie in the sky principles. But what we want to do is we want to give people the knowledge, the information, and blend the sciences of possibility, whether it's quantum physics or neuroplasticity or neuroendocrinology or epigenetics or whatever it is, hormonal changes, psychoneuroimmunology. We want to give them the information and have them reason it. We want them to be able to turn to someone next to them and explain what they just learned, so they wire it in there. We want to give them the instruction and have them review the instruction, and then we want to put them into the experience. But all we need is a few. And if that person or a series of people have that experience, that transformation, and we measure that transformation, that's more information to teach transformation the next time, because I can understand what took place. So our work is only as good as our students' ability to regulate and change those states. But I do know that if you give people the opportunity and they have enough times in their environment to apply it, you'll start seeing those transformations occur. And now we're stepping outside the paradigm of the human beings are limited, they're powerless, they need these external things to take care of them. I think it's time that we start taking a little bit more responsibility for these things and seeing if we're able to do it in a practical, measurable way. Okay, well, most people, number one, they get up in the morning and they check their cell phone, they chat or Facebook, they post something on Facebook, drive to work the same way, do the same thing. So they're in a program. They've actually lost their free will to the program. Wow. So if you start your day and you start your day with this simple question: what is the greatest ideal of myself that I can be today? You ask yourself that question. Now listen, your body's going to go like, well, you got to get a cup of coffee and you got to, I'm tired, yeah. And you got to go, body, you're not the mind, I'm the mind right now. You're going to sit here, I'm going to feed you. You're going to get your coffee, you're going to do all those things, but right now, this is my time. You're going to obey me, right? So now, the body's no longer the mind, you're the mind. And so when it wants to get up and you become aware of it, and return back to the present moment, every time you do, that's a victory. Wow. And you're changing some aspect of yourself. So then, ask yourself, I do this all the time, write down 4 thoughts that you're going to stay conscious of the whole day. Stay conscious of the whole day. I can't, it's too hard. You'd be surprised
The moment you become conscious of what those thoughts are, how unconscious you've been to them all day, up for weeks on end. Write down what you speak, how you speak, 4 things you want to change, how you act. How do you act? Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you make excuses? Do you feel sorry for yourself? That's a victim consciousness. What emotions do you live by? Is it possible that you're so used to living by guilt you don't even know it's guilt, it just feels like you? Do you allow your energy to drop? Become conscious of those states of mind and body and review them. And say, this is the old self. Then say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And start firing and wiring and start feeling it. What behaviors will I demonstrate today? What choices will I make? One day, one lifetime. And just like you did, rehearse them. Rehearse the whole entire thing. Yeah. Begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain. And if you keep installing it, the hardware is going to become a software program, and you start thinking and acting that way. And then here's the tough part. Can you teach your body emotionally what your future is going to feel like before it's made manifest? And don't get up until you feel that way. Now, practice that for a few days, and then see if you can stay in that state and watch all of a sudden all those weird doors start opening for you. Synchronicities, whatever they are. Number 2, take a time at the end of your day, before you lay down, and give thanks for your life. And feel gratitude and really teach your body what it feels like. The emotional signature of gratitude. When gratitude means you're getting something. If I give you something that's of value, you would say thank you because you would feel it, right? So when you're receiving, you're giving thanks. So gratitude is the ultimate state of receiving. So then people only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to their emotional state. So if you're in a state of gratitude, every thought